What's up, everybody? James Bushell here, and I'm back at you with another video. Just to put a disclaimer out there, this is going to be a spoiler-heavy review, so if you have not watched the episode, I suggest you do come back and tell me what you thought. So that being said, here's a little spoiler alert. This is going to be my highest rated episode of the season. I thoroughly loved it. One of my favorite episodes of the series. So, let's just get into it. We are going to start with the first scene, which was Sansa and Littlefinger meeting in Mole Town. Of course, we have a very upset Sansa, reasonably upset Sansa, obviously, for what Littlefinger put her through, essentially by leaving her with Ramsay Bolton. I love the quote that Sansa says here. You know, she essentially says something along the lines of, "You're either a huge idiot for not knowing what was going to happen, or you're my enemy, because you knew what was going to happen." Of course, Littlefinger's going to feign ignorance. I guess we kind of believe that he obviously is kind of telling the truth that he didn't know what Ramsay was capable of, but, that's my assumption. I do enjoy this scene, though I did not like Sansa refusing the Knights of the Vale. And I know people are going to say, it was fine, it was okay because of what happened there, that Littlefinger put her through by leaving her. And I just wish, with the way they've been kind of progressing Sansa's characters, making her more strong, and having her be the one to trumpet, let's go to take Winterfell. I think it would have made sense for her to step back, let her, put her emotions in check. Yes, Littlefinger put you in a terrible position, but the Knights of the Vale would help you immensely in your fight against Winterfell. And I still think it's going to happen. I still think Baelish Ex Machina is going to happen. I believe at the Battle of Winterfell, when things all look lost, the Knights of the Vale will indeed turn the tide of the battle. But they've been rebuffed for now. Like I said, I take a utilitarian view of things, and I think if it was me, obviously, I can't really say that because, it's hard to project myself in her situation. Obviously, she's been through a lot of terrible things. I mean, we can all agree to that. If not, you're a terrible person. She's been through some terrible shit on the show. And I still think, though, that she should have taken the Knights of the Vale. I can kind of see her point. It's kind of like the Tony Stark the point in Civil War at the end of that movie. But that being said, I still thought it was a pretty good scene. I just wish she would have taken the help from the Knights of the Vale. That being said, we will move on. This next scene takes place in Braavos. It's technically 3 scenes. First, Arya is sparring with the Waif. The Waif essentially gets the better of her and calls her Lady Stark, which, of course, so she does not really truly believe that Arya has submitted to the Faceless Men and saying that she is truly no one, because she's still calling her Lady Stark. Jaqen sends her on a mission to kill a Lady Crane, I believe her name is, an actress, with poison. And that is when they also take Arya to the Hall of Faces. He gives her a spiel about the history of the Faceless Men, and essentially sends a veiled threat, like, if you're not truly no one, your face is coming on this wall regardless. Either you're going to submit to the Faceless Men, or we're going to kill you. Which I believe this is all setting up Arya's escape from the Faceless Men. I think that's definitely what it's setting up. Next, they go to the play, which is reenacting, essentially, the fall of Robert Baratheon's death and the fall of Ned Stark, and Joffrey taking over as king and executing Ned Stark. I thoroughly enjoyed this satire of a play. It was funny. It was cool. I was actually engaged, and I thought the play was really cool. Like, I could watch that version of Game of Thrones, a satirical play. It would be funny to watch. So, of course, we get to the back, and after the play is over, and, Arya, is, like, kind of observing the situation. She sees that this Lady Crane's not a bad person, and she's like, well, why does this person need to die? It's kind of how I was interpreting it. She gets back, she starts having these questions to Jaqen, and Jaqen's not really having any of it. So, like I said, I think it's pretty obvious that with her asking all these questions, being inquisitive, I think she's kind of realizing, like, maybe this isn't for me, and I think her escape is coming up pretty soon. All in all, I enjoyed the Bravo stuff. It was fine. Like I said, for me, the highlight was the play. I really enjoyed it. But it was definitely a fine aspect of the show. Now, of course, this next scene is a doozy. We see Bran and Bloodraven working in the past, have another vision. And we see the Children of the Forest walk toward this human who is standing there tied up. And first off, we see this panning shot of this weirwood tree that looked strikingly like Bloodraven. But yeah, that's on a tangent. But, you know, it looks like they're shoving dragon glass into this guy's heart, and this is what turns him into a White Walker. Presumably the first White Walker, maybe? Doesn't say, but... you know, this is obviously very important to the story. We learned that Children of the Forest created the White Walkers. And I got to give props to Don Willie. This has been his theory, along with Tony Teflon. And it's just, you know, it's something that I started believing into as well. I kind of always viewed it like as a virus. Like, they created a virus in the White Walkers. And this virus was supposed to wipe out humanity, who was destroying their livelihood, destroying their trees, and the way they lived. Now, eventually, this virus got out of control and started killing them as well. And that is when the pact at the Isle of Faces was made. And I just loved it. I loved the scene. I loved that this lore they're getting into, this mythology. I'm glad they're finally doing stuff like this. You know, getting into the magical and more fantastical. This is stuff that I love. Now, one thing I viewed it as, like, you know, a parasite wants a host to live. It's going to leach nutrients off of the host, but it wants the host to live ultimately, or it'll drain it till it dies. The Children of the Forest created a virus. Viruses has one sole purpose in life, and that is to destroy. So that's kind of how I view it. The White Walkers are a force of nature that the Children of the Forest unleashed on the world, and they're not going to rest until the world is dead. That's kind of how I view it. Overall, I love the scene. It was great. But we will move on. There will be more Children of the Forest in the future in this episode. Next up is the King's Moot. You know, to me, it was kind of paint by numbers. It was kind of how I expected it. I expected Yara to first start out with a stirring speech, and then Theon, they were going to kind of maybe like show, oh man, is he really going to back Yara, which he does. And then, of course, we know Euron was going to come, and then I knew that we all kind of knew what was going to happen. Euron eventually would win the King's Moot. I thought his speech was fine, though he's not really crazy like Euron. I think they're definitely going with a Euron-Victarion hybrid, it seems like. But that being said, you know, that whole beginning speech was fine, I guess. The whole interaction between the three, actually. Euron and his niece and nephew. And of course, Euron is elected. He wins the Salt Throne, as they call it. And he gets this weak-ass crown, which was pretty weak. But, you know, it is what it is. I thought it was kind of weak, like, I saw what happened. Euron wins, and then immediately Yara and Theon bounce with a whole bunch of people to steal the ships. I don't know. But it was whatever. It wasn't definitely as epic as it was in the books, but it was fine for what it needed to do. The drowning scene was cool. Though I feel like he shouldn't have, that he should have needed some resuscitation, but I'll let it slide. All in all, I believe what's going to happen is Yara is going to come up with the idea of going to Essos first, to Meereen, to essentially warn Dany about Euron, how crazy he is, and how, you know, I think they're going to kind of come up with this deal of like, look, you have my ships, we'll take you back to Meereen, or we'll take you back to Westeros. I will bend the knee to you, but we need to take out Euron, and Yara will be like, I become the queen of the Iron Islands. I will bend the knee to you, Daenerys Targaryen, once you are leading Westeros. So I think it's something along those lines. Next up, we have a touching scene involving Dany, Jorah, and Jorah. I thought that Daario was going to rat out Jorah, and I'm glad he didn't. Jorah manned up, told Dany, hey, I have grayscale. He told her the truth, and I thought this scene was great and touching. Dany demands that Jorah finds a cure, and it's good to see Jorah get some sort of redemption in some ways, and Dany finally sees, she kind of sees the value in Jorah, who I like in the show. I don't like him as much in the books, but I like him in the show, and I think a lot of that is because of Ian Glen's performance. But that being said, I enjoyed this scene, and I still believe Daario is the Harpy, and we'll find out next week, I believe. So moving on from that scene, we have a very interesting scene involving Kinvara, the Red Priestess. Tyrion essentially summons her to gain their favor. When Dany comes back, they'll have some sort of bond or connection with the Red Priests. And I thoroughly enjoyed the scene. First off, I enjoyed how Kinvara mentioned that Dany was who was promised. Of course, we have in the north Mel saying Jon is the prince that was promised. So I'm thinking they're maybe foreshadowing some sort of clash, maybe, or some sort of conflict. Very interesting that Kinvara would say that Dany is the one that's promised. So, it's funny seeing Varys get scared. I mean, he was when Kinvara was telling Varys of his past that he has. I'm assuming he hasn't really told that many people about. We know that he told Tyrion, but I found it interesting. His face, he was like, damn, some shit's going down, and I don't know what it is. I really like Varys. I thought it was kind of un-Varys-like for him to get kind of emotional there with his suspicion with the Red Priestess, but I'm very interested to see where this goes. Kinvara, they said that she was the first priest of R'hllor or something along those lines. The first servant of the light, Lord of the Light, I believe is what it was. And the head priestess at Volantis. So, and they definitely showed her ruby. They made a point to show her ruby, so she might even be older than Mel. I don't know. We'll have to see. Very interesting scene. Love the Red Priests. I love the lore behind them. I'm very excited to see what's going on with that in the future. So, of course, next we have a pretty creepy scene. Bran goes rogue and touches the tree without Bloodraven, which was a bad idea, as we'll see. He sees a large cadre of whites. He walks through them. I thought it was kind of like a horror cliche, like, Bran, what are you doing? You're kind of act like like a dumb person in a horror movie. He walks through the cadre of whites, and he sees the horsemen, the White Walkers sitting there. Very interesting scene, very atmospheric, very creepy. And when he looks at the crowd of whites and they're looking at him, I knew this is the scene where the Night's King was going to touch him. And he turns around and there's the Night's King touching him. Very cool. Very cool. It's interesting, I guess, if the Night's King touches you in a vision, you get branded, and he can tell he can tell where you are, which is interesting, I suppose. And I definitely believe, we're getting some confirmation here that the Night's King is definitely on some sort of plane in terms of magic, along with he's obviously some sort of last Greenseer as well, or something along those lines, a super ward, because he was able to see Bran in the vision. So obviously he is definitely a powerful individual. I'm very curious to learn more of his origins, which I hope we do in the show. Yeah. I mean, it was just cool. It was cool. I don't know what else to say. After this scene, we're back at the wall. Jon, Sansa, and Davos come up with a plan. Sansa kind of questions Davos, like, "Oh, you're not a Northman. You don't know what the hell you're talking about." But Davos holds his own. He tells me he knows people. And it's true, Davos does know people, and she shouldn't question Davos in loyalty, because we know Davos is a loyal individual. But, she doesn't know him as well, so it is what it is. Essentially, they come up with a plan to try and galvanize all the smaller houses against the Boltons. And I think we'll be seeing that coming up in the next couple of episodes. She also lies and says that she learned from a raven before she left Winterfell that the Blackfish, her uncle, her great uncle, has an army ready at River Run. And even though she learned that from Littlefinger, she lied about it. But essentially, she tells Brienne to go there, get their support, and come back to the north to help take back Winterfell. So obviously, we know that Brienne is going to be going to Riverlands. And it's going to be cool. I'm ready to see the Blackfish, man. Blackfish is an awesome character, and I can't wait to see him. And I'm hoping for only good things. So after that, the crew at the wall leaves Winterfell, and Ed Tollett is sitting there, and a guy comes up and says, "Lord Commander, do we close the gate now?" Or something along those lines, and he says, "I'm not the Lord Commander." And then it pauses, and he was looking at everyone looking at him. He was like, "Ah, shit! All right, close the gate. I guess I'm the Lord Commander." Of course, we knew that Ed wasn't the Lord Commander, because no other Night's Watch person had any lines or dialogue, so it had to be him. So after that scene, we get to, of course, the finale scene. We're back at the cave, and Bloodraven and Bran are in a vision again. And of course, at this point, Mira is starting to notice, she runs outside, and she sees what's happening. She sees the White Army and the Night's King and the other White Walkers are right on top of them. And shit's about to go down. The Children of the Forest, they get their Super Mario Bros. Fire pedal and start chucking fireballs. And Mira runs in and tries to wake up Bran. And then, of course, the White Walkers eventually, and the Whites bust into the tree. All the Children of the Forest, except Leaf, are essentially slain. And, of course, we have the sad death of Summer. Very unfortunate. I thought Summer deserved a better death than that. I thought the death was kind of weak. It just kind of came out of nowhere. I thought it required some build-up or something like that. But it just kind of came out of nowhere. It is what it is. And then, of course, we see Bran starting to look at Hodor in the past, Willis in the past, and he starts hearing Mira Reed's cries for help. And I believe this is kind of my theory here, is I believe that because I was wondering, I was like, why is Bloodraven, I did a video on this just recently, but I was like, why is Bloodraven bringing Bran into a vision in the past when he knows there's imminent danger on their doorstep? He knew that the White Walkers were going to come. He knew he was going to die. Bloodraven knew he was going to die. And he brought Bran in this vision for a reason. And that reason was he needed Bran to warg Hodor. This is just my speculation. He needed Bran to warg Hodor in the past, to damage his mind. Very much like what Varamir Sixskins did to Thistle in the books. He needed him to damage his brain in the past. And it's messed up. It's messed up to do this. It's terrible. Because you essentially ruin Hodor's childhood and his life. But he needed Bran to warg Hodor in the past, to weaken his brain. It made him, obviously, it made him what it is. And the reason why he had to do this was because Bloodraven knew that Bran was going to have to need to warg Hodor in the future. The stuff we've seen throughout the series. When he had to warg into Hodor when the thunderstorm was happening, when Hodor was going crazy, when Jon was running away from Tormund and Orell. He needed to warg into Hodor to keep him quiet. He had to warg into Hodor to escape from Craster's Keep, and he had to warg into Hodor to fight off the Whites outside the cave, underneath the tree. So essentially, because Bran wasn't very adept at that point, Bloodraven had to weaken Hodor's mind so a weak Bran would be able to warg Hodor in those moments of need. to make it to the tree. And it opens up this time paradox. That's what I think. I may very well be wrong, but that's what I think. The bottom line is, though, Hodor's death might potentially be, to me, it's definitely one of the most heartbreaking scenes of this whole series. Me personally, I have never cried on Game of Thrones. I still haven't, but this scene, to me, I live for those epic moments in media. Those moments where like music is swelling, epic shit is happening, and you get these full body chills. It's like a natural high, and this gave me the chills in spades, I'm telling you. When Hodor is there holding the door with his back, and he has this heartbreaking look on his face, just soul-crushing look on his face. And you're hearing hold the door, and you see him younger, seizing on the ground, yelling, hold the door. And it keeps flashing between Hodor and young Hodor and old Hodor. And when hold the door eventually becomes Hodor, and you just see the sad look on Hodor's face, his life was essentially created just to hold this door right here, to save Bran's life, in order to potentially save the world. It's very sad when you think about it, and I love Hodor. Rip Hodor. Christian Nairn deserves a lot of credit. His acting in that last scene, when he's holding the door and his face is so sad, it's just heart-wrenching. And to me, I loved it. It might even actually be my favorite scene ever in the show, just that last scene. That being said, I guess on the show we can throw away that Bloodraven is evil. He essentially did seem kind of genuine, and he died in the vision, and he died in real life. He seemed kind of genuine that he was helping Bran. And the Children of the Forest, yes, they created the White Walkers, but they're not inherently evil. They made a mistake that got out of control. Yes, they were going to kill humanity, but in the end, they were trying to stop the White Walkers. I mean, Leaf sacrificed her life in order for them to get away. And so I don't think we can say they're evil either. They definitely fucked up, but I don't think we can say they're evil. So that being said, guys, I'm about to give this a rating. I've only given 2 10s in my whole watching Game of Thrones experience. That would be Blackwater and Hardhome. This episode almost gets there, but there's kind of things that didn't make it perfect. But I'm giving this episode a 9.75. It's my highest rated episode of this season. I just loved it, guys. It's my 3rd favorite episode of the series, and I'm sticking with that. It was just so great. And the Hodor moment, I think that's my favorite moment in the series. So that being said, guys, if you like this review, let me know in the comments. Hit the like button, share it on social media, and subscribe. Until next time, guys. Adios.